This is one of the things I think is key to AR. You have to have the ear of the salespeople. They need to listen to you, and at one point they need to trust you with what you tell them is actually helpful. And I can say the ones I met at SoftwareOne, they not only listened, they were like, oh my God, if I had known that earlier. And that is where I think traditional AR misses out very often. And that is not on purpose.
Welcome to TBR Talks, decoding strategies and ecosystems of the globe's top tech firms, where we talk business model disruption in the broad technology ecosystem, from management consultancies to systems integrators, hyperscalers to independent software vendors, telecom operators to network and infrastructure vendors, and chip manufacturers to value-added resellers. We'll be answering some of the key intelligence questions we've heard from executives and business unit leaders among the leading professional IT services and telecom vendors. I'm Patrick Heffernan, Principal Analyst, and today you'll hear my colleague Allan Krans, Cloud and Software Principal Analyst, speaking with Dr. Jochen Wolf, Global Head of Industry Analyst Relations at SoftwareOne, about building an analyst relations organization.
Well, great. Welcome, everybody. I'm excited to be joined today by Dr. Jochen Wolf, currently Global Head of Analyst Relations for SoftwareOne. But he brings a wealth of experience in AR in the technology segment that I'm excited to dive down and just go into some of his insights after working in the space for quite some time. So I'm Allan Krans. I'm Principal Analyst for Cloud and Software, sitting in for Patrick Heffernan as he's on a business trip, and we'll dive right into the conversation. Welcome, Jochen.
Thanks for having me, Allan. It's my first time here at TBR headquarters, and I'm pretty impressed. I'm actually really impressed by what I've seen. I heard a lot about what you guys do here, how you do it, and how you are set up, but this is like, wow. First thing I have to say, whoever has an opportunity to drop by a TBR in Hampton, you have to do it. It is really, really cool. So thanks for having me.
Happy to have it. It's a great way to bring people in and fill some podcast slots as well. So we'll take advantage of that. So first, we had dinner last night, and one of the things that I've always struggled with in my role is describing to my parents, relatives, people who aren't familiar with the role of analysts and analyst relations, kind of what the job actually is. Take me through how you describe the role of analyst relations and your current position.
It actually depends on the audience how I describe it. And my fun example doing this is always when my mom asks me what I actually am doing, because I'm on the road so much and I literally traveled the world over the last almost 25 years. I tried to explain to her, and I realized at one point it doesn't really go anywhere. So I said, it has to do with computers. And you know what? That was sufficient. Everybody now knows her son does something with computers, and apparently that works pretty well for him. But kidding aside, people ask, what is this you do? Because analyst relations, I think, for a lot of people is still an unknown practice. If you are not in the technology industry in particular, nobody really knows what analyst relation means. And I had people talk to me about analyst relations, and they all thought about the financial analyst. That's the number one thing you have to get over. Tell them we are not the ones who influence people who influence the stock price. We are doing influencing in a different way. And we talk to the people who influence buying decisions in the technology sector, and who are the ones who actually make things happen for big companies. And I am the broker of information between those companies and the analysts. Why do you need a broker? That's the next question I normally get. The broker is there to make sure that the right people talk to each other. Now, Allan Krans, for example, is an analyst influencing a client of us who is a prospect, not a client yet. And I know about this. I am the analyst relations person for this client. And then I am the one who makes sure that Allan has the right person to talk to. So that's my broker role. But that doesn't mean that's all I do. First of all, I have to know Allan. And secondly, that person I want to bring in front of Allan has to know me as well, because otherwise he wouldn't take the meeting. So we have to do a job internally to educate people why it is important to have this function in place. And we might come to that a little bit later. because I built this function up at my current company. And there were a lot of things completely unknown to me because I was working the first 20 plus years of my AR career in a setup environment where everybody knew about the function and they all knew what we as AR did. In my new company, that was a different thing. But I think we come to that later. To cut a long story short, somebody who is really interested I'm the broker of information for my company towards a group of very smart, very well-educated and unbelievably well-connected people. And that is it in a nutshell. And if somebody then really wants to go deeper, then we could go deeper, but that probably would fill the podcast, and that's not what we want to do today.
Great. Yeah. I'd love to dive into your experience. So coming from a well-established analyst relations program and really being tasked with starting a new one within a new organization, what are some of the things that you learned and what was that effort like to get that up and running within SoftwareOne?
It is, I mean, you have to keep in mind, I'm not the youngest anymore. I'm kind of at the going down part of my career, being almost 60 years old now. I have been doing it for a long time. And then at one point, you kind of get complacent with what you do. At least you get the impression you do, but you normally don't because things change too often. And therefore, you always have new topics, you have new technologies, you have new analysts to talk to. Nevertheless, there is a function in place which you are a part of. And that makes your job much easier than if you go somewhere and there is nothing there and you have to build it from scratch. So when I had the opportunity, which was given to me by the CMO of my current company, who said to me, you need to build up a practice nobody knows about, or only a couple of people in the company know about. Would you like to do this? And I thought, okay, after having done this for a long time, now I eventually could do it the way I think it's properly done. We all know you are in a system and then the system does things and sometimes you do not agree and sometimes you do, but you try to pick the best practices, the things you think need to be done to be successful. And I was given that opportunity and I jumped right into it because I thought, this is it. I finally can do it. And that's how I started the program. I can say it is quite a task, but it's very fulfilling because you see every day, it's like an architect. The more you go on the construction side, you see the advantage of whatever you build up day by day. And with this position, I was brought in as a one-man show back in the day. It is, you build something, you have the opportunity to convince people about the importance of what you do. Many of my stakeholders at the beginning didn't know what this is all about and why they should talk to analysts. Most of the people, of course, knew of the big player in the market, and I think I can mention the name Gartner is something everybody's familiar, but that's probably where the story stops for many people. And I had to come in and tell them there is more to it than that, and we just don't have to focus on one particular piece of research. We have to get out there. And the fun thing about my company was when I told my analyst colleagues when I moved out of my old position where I go to, I said I go to SoftwareOne. They all said, software who? Right? So I knew right away that's the first thing I have to change. I have to change the perception of the company because nobody knows what we do. And SoftwareOne is Microsoft's largest partner. It's a $1 billion company, and we have been known as a reseller in the reselling market, but right now we do more than half of our revenue in services. So we are not really a reseller anymore. We still do it, but we want to go more on the services side. And analysts very often said, SoftwareOne, the reseller, they all want to become services companies, but they don't. And I say, how often do you hear that they make actually more money on the services side? Not that often. I said, yes, but we do. So please listen. And there was one advantage I had when I joined SoftwareOne, and that was the last part of my old responsibility in my old company was the services business. That means most of the analysts I worked with, I could convince to have at least a look at SoftwareOne. And that has to do with relationships. You build relationships over 20 years. if you say somebody, listen, I would like you, dear analyst, to have a look at my company, my new one, because I think there is something in it for both of us. If you earned that trust, things are much easier. That's why I think having the experience when you start installing an AR program is definitely helpful. I don't think it cannot be done if you don't have the experience and the network, but having the network and the experience definitely make things much easier.
Great. And how have you seen, in terms of those internal stakeholders, obviously you were brought in by the CMO, so a marketing influence. What other groups and what have you seen in terms of best practices for how to get value out of what analysts bring to the table and channeling that in your role in analyst relations?
So one of the key things for me was always AR for sales. So when I started, and I think in my first interview, I presented a little plan I put together for that SoftwareOne company. And they were quite impressed because I came in and I had a plan laid out which made sense to them right away because it apparently covered all the topics they had in mind, one way or the other, which needed to be addressed by a function they didn't have at that time. So for me, having salespeople knowledgeable about what analysts' influence means to their everyday business was one of the first steps I took. So I tried to get in front of sales meetings. You know, there were like sales kickoff meetings in our different regions, and I could convince the responsible people for the event to give me a 45-minute slot to be on stage and to be able to talk to 100, 200, or however people they had in that room about what I do and how it can influence their life. And I gave them stories where analysts actually influenced the deal by not only having written a report, which then led to the signing because somebody thought they are a good candidate in this report, featured very prominently, let's do this. Nobody buys, and nobody bases a buying decision on one report only. We all know that. What is more important is that if I have a salesperson who knows that Allan Krans is putting together the shortlist for customer, I don't know, John Doe Boats Corporated, that helps because then I can go to my salesperson and say, hey, you know what? Talk to Mr. Boats about the fact that there is an analyst we work with. Allan knows everything about what we can do and how we can help him, the boat company, to solve his problems. That will make a difference. And that happens. And that had happened as well in my past. And it happened in the last 2 years at SoftwareOne. I had really feedback from salespeople telling me the fact that you told me we have an analyst who can talk to my client about what SoftwareOne does made the difference. And sometimes they got on shortlists. They didn't even got on a shortlist before with that client. And some of them closed the deal because of the fact that the analysts were giving them positive feedback about what SoftwareOne does. This is one of the things I think is key to AR. You have to have the ear of the salespeople. They need to listen to you, and at one point they need to trust you with what you tell them is actually helpful. And I can say the ones I met at SoftwareOne, they not only listened, they were like, oh my God, if I had known that earlier. And that is where I think traditional AR misses out very often. And that is not on purpose. That is because many AR departments, whether it's a small one-man, one-woman show, or whether there are some with 100 AR folks, I heard, they all are focused on research. They are all filling in RFIs, they do like briefings, inquiries. Well, inquiries would help, but to a large extent, it's briefings and RFIs, and focusing on reports only, and they lose out on the opportunity to influence deals through people like you and your colleagues, Allan. And that is, on a side note, why I like working with TBR so much. I can call you up and you say, you know what? I would like to bring 3 of my colleagues and we can have a conversation. And I'm not bound by a subscription model, because with other firms, I can't bring my colleagues in. If I'm a seat holder, it's me. Maybe I get a +1, and my colleagues all know that, and they are all in the same position. With you, it's different. So you bring in your friends, and I bring in all my friends, and all of a sudden we have a meeting which we can record for later listening within the team, and then we have a lively conversation about the things which really make a difference. Whether it's salespeople, you did that as well for me, or whether it's my product matter experts. And those interactions, they are just gold for them. And they all say, we need to do that more often. Why is TBR the only firm we can do that with? Well, that's a different conversation why that is, but that is your really key differentiator for people like myself. You help me a lot with those interactions we have to really excel in the game targets I just described a little bit earlier, in particular the sales part.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And one of the things that I think, I want to get your reaction to this, but I think the ecosystem dynamic of our research that we've added is really relevant, because you mentioned being a big Microsoft partner, big SAP partner. It's not just SoftwareOne selling directly to these customers. There's a whole ecosystem of technology. And then, as you know from Patrick's coverage, other services providers, consultants that are going to be part of most of the engagements that are really moving the needle for businesses out there. So how does that perspective of being able to know about some of the big technology partners, what they're focused on investing in, trying to deliver to customers, and then also the other services players in the ecosystem that you'll be working with, how have you seen that be valuable?
It is valuable because that's the insight you don't get out of reading reports. If you ever have time reading reports about something which is not affecting your direct area of responsibility. And I go back like 10 years or 5 years even, I was in the same position. I have been so focused on what I have, to do and what I was responsible for. And in my old company, there were not one magic quadrant or five, there were way more, and there were this and that and the other format of research you had to focus on. There was no bandwidth to begin with. And if you had the bandwidth, then you did not really know where to go and who to ask and how to do this. So maybe that was because I didn't know how to do it. I don't think that this is the case, but it was just not the approach of the analyst firms out there, except like people like you. TBR and I go back more than 20 years. I can really say that, which is a funny thing. And always you were different because of that approach. You gave us the insight from the ecosystem, how they look at us, my old or my new company, where they see room for improvement, where they see best practices. We probably are better than somebody else, which we then could stress with our partners. That is a value you don't really get anywhere else. And that is why it is so important for me to get this insight. And trust me, my stakeholders like that as well. Some of my executives come from companies like Microsoft or ServiceNow or Rackspace or AWS for that matter. Of course they get it. They get it right away. And the more they know, we see the other side as well, and we have the influence of getting the information out of the other side, it definitely helps them to do the job even better. And therefore, they like those conversations on a broader basis and not just, we have to fill in an RFI by the 30th of November and then we wait what happens and then we get something to look at and read through and fact check. And I hate it. That's not what I think AI is the most valuable tool for. There are other things we need to do much better, and that is one of them.
Great. Now, in terms of the analyst research, if you could consult with us, if you could consult with other analyst firms, what do you think that the key changes that we should be thinking about are in terms of how to better serve analyst relations and the clients that we have?
I mean, there are two aspects. If you say we, is TBR, or is it we, the analyst community? Because to me, you are the model I would like to have with all the others, because it's so easy, first of all, to engage with you, because you are not seat bound. You have a subscription, which is a very broad subscription, at least in my case, and it was, all the time I worked with you. And the big benefit is I have access to whoever I want to have access to within your firm. And in other firms, that is not the case. And I was at an event this week of one of your competitors, and I actually raised the question to their leadership team, because their model is a very restricted one. And there you have a subscription and it probably covers an area you are really interested in. And there are two analysts working on that area. And these are the two only analysts you can talk to. Although you are a client of that analyst firm, and if you have, like, I don't have to tell you that, a topic like AI, how can it be that I only have one area? Even if this area, let's say, is professional services or cloud services, then there is the AI aspect to that. Those two analysts, they have to talk to their colleagues about the influence of AI, data and AI. What does it make? It's a plethora of analyst colleagues they need to talk to be able to have a foundation for a really good conversation with their clients. Me, the client, I can't talk to the others. I have to listen what they tell me, and that is a restrictive model which doesn't work. And that's what I actually told them on that Q&A session. I said that doesn't help a client, and definitely doesn't help AR. The model you have, again, with Allan, I need some input on this and that topic. If bad comes to worse, you say, I need a day or two to figure this out with my colleagues. But normally it says, tell me when you have time, bring in whoever you want. This is what I need. And this is why AR can really be way more proactive if you have that model than if you stick to the subscription the way almost every other, at least bigger analyst firm does. I had the peer conversations in particular this week, and we all have the same issues in a way. And this is not a secret, and we talk openly about it. And everybody really tries to influence also the sales teams of the analyst firms and their research leadership. Think about it. And now there is the thing which I realized, especially this week and last week, where I talked to another one of the big firms, research leaders, and they said, we get you. And literally it is very often in our interest that we would do it the way you just described it, Jochen. And I said, why doesn't it change? And said, I don't know. It hinders our expansion. It hinders our access to clients. I want to talk with more people, but if the system internally restricts me doing so, what can I do? And there are some frustrated analysts out there. So maybe they listen in and they think, if TBR is doing this differently, who knows, right?
Yeah. Great. Anything else about the kind of the future of AR? It's been, it seems like it started with a lot of the technology companies. It's kind of a US focused role in some ways. How do you think AR needs to change? You mentioned being proactive, which I've seen you do probably more than any other AR lead that we've interacted with, going out to the executives, building their relationships, thinking about what they need to know and the decisions that they're trying to make, and connecting the analyst research into that. What else do you think in terms of AR best practices do you think should change?
We had a conversation earlier with some of your colleagues when we arrived here today, and about that AR in a way is a US-centered function. And we had this conversation, why is that? And of course it is because most of the analysts are US-based. The topic as such, influencing through communications and a practice like analyst relations, is a very American thing. As we know, in Asia, AR is not having that impact. Analysts don't really have the same impact they have in other regions of the world. EMEA is similar. Very often, especially in the old days when I started back in the very early 2000s, there was even a language barrier. So there were executives in big corporations in Europe who had issues with the comprehensive reading of a report, which was written by an English native speaker. Everything was in English. Now the generation, has renewed, and there are a lot of people, so language is not an issue anymore. Nevertheless, there are clients where this is still an issue. Large corporations are all global corporations. English is just a given. Nobody asks whether you speak English. They just know that you do. If you go to medium or small businesses, it's a completely different story. And this is where the money is. SME as well, especially in Europe. Germany, the best example. They don't know what to do with an analyst from the US. They don't know what to talk about, or they sometimes don't even know how to communicate. So AR needs to be, I think, a lot more proactive when it comes to a global approach, because people in Europe listen as well to what market leaders say. And if this market leader is an analyst, or if it's a journalist who brings a really big news article, influencers on the internet, bloggers, whatever it is, people start to listen more than they did before. So AR as an established function, I think, has the duty to be more proactive in those regions and make sure that people understand the value people like you bring in all that noise which is out there when it comes to what do we do and how it's been done and what is important and what's the next big thing. Like right now, everybody's talking about AI. So what does that mean? If you go to a small business in Germany and talk about AI, which is KI in Germany, künstliche Intelligenz, artificial intelligence, to them it's ChatGPT and nothing else. But that's not AI the way we talk about AI, another separate conversation. But the perception is, this is the big thing, we have to do something about it. And then you see that people actually don't really know about it. So my function needs to make sure that those companies get access to analyst firms who can tell them how to do it better.
Jochen, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you not only doing the podcast, but stopping by and spending some time with us at our headquarters here. And we look forward to continuing the interaction.
I can promise you, whenever I'm around, I come up because it's great to be here. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks.
We'll be taking a break over the winter, and we'll be back with Season 3 in 2025. Don't forget to send us your key intelligence questions on business strategy, ecosystems, and management consulting through the form in the show notes below. Visit tbri.com to learn how we help tech companies large and small answer these questions with the research, data, and analysis my guests bring to this conversation every week. Once again, I'm your host, Patrick Heffernan, Principal Analyst at TBR. Thanks for joining us, and see you next season.